Welcome to This Explainer. The next time you walk through the turnstiles of a major stadium, take a second to really look around. Because that environment you're stepping into, it's the result of decades of intense engineering and legislation. Today, we're exploring a fascinating and honestly profoundly important topic: how modern stadium safety was born out of unthinkable tragedy. We'll look at how the fan experience is continuously evolving to balance that raw human passion we all love with the cold, hard, empirical science of safety. There's this 1999 Guardian article that perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding a central transformation in sports history. It talks about how the dangerous, chaotic, and often totally neglected standing terraces of the past morphed into the hyper-regulated, billion-dollar entertainment venues we know today. It was a massive shift. We went from seeing fans as, well, just a mass to be contained, to individuals to be protected and, monetized. Think about the architectural shift this actually required. We moved from traditional bowl-shaped terracing, basically these massive open spaces where highly dense crowds surged freely, straight to the modern all-seater design. And this new model prioritizes individual, fixed seating. By assigning every single ticket holder a specific physical coordinate in the stadium, operators can do things they couldn't before. They can facilitate strict crowd control, accurately calculate density, and ensure a rapid, organized evacuation if things go south.
Section 1, Era of the Terraces. Let's get into it. So, diving back into the mid to late 20th century, European football grounds relied heavily on open terraces to maximize capacity. Now, culturally, these were absolutely huge. They fostered this intense tribal belonging, a physical proximity where fans literally stood shoulder to shoulder, generating a massive wall of sound and just an incredible atmosphere. But practically speaking, packing in 2 to 3 standing patrons per square meter inherently facilitated dangerous dynamic surges. A surge at the back could cascade right to the front with devastating force, especially because these areas severely lacked adequate crush barriers, flow segregation, and clear exit routes.
Section 2. Tragedy forcing change. Unfortunately, stadium engineering and safety legislation didn't exactly evolve proactively. It actually took a series of catastrophic events for authorities to catch up with the lethal realities of unchecked crowd dynamics. It's a tough timeline to look back on, but absolutely essential for understanding the modern stadium. In 1971, the Ibrox disaster saw a fatal crush on a narrow stairway. In 1985, a discarded match ignited a horrific fire in a timber-constructed stand at Bradford City. That exact same year, the Heysel disaster occurred when a hooligan charge led to a decaying wall collapse. And then, in 1989, the Hillsborough disaster. This rapid succession of devastating incidents completely exposed the fatal flaws of antiquated stadiums. We're talking narrow stairways, highly flammable materials, and rigid radial fences that were designed to trap fans in rather than let them escape danger. 97. That is the heartbreaking number of lives lost at Hillsborough due to compression asphyxia. Thousands of fans were funneled into overcapacity standing enclosures, trapped against high steel perimeter fences with literally nowhere to go. It was a failure of policing, a failure of crowd management, and fundamentally a complete failure of stadium architecture. This immense tragedy was the ultimate catalyst. It forced the government to act immediately and decisively.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Taylor Report Revolution.
Right after Hillsborough, Lord Justice Taylor was appointed to investigate, and his findings were a total game changer. He fundamentally shifted the focus of stadium safety away from simply managing hooliganism and directed it towards the structural and geometric flaws of the stadiums themselves. The resulting reforms were sweeping. The Football Spectators Order mandated the progressive elimination of standing terraces. Top-tier clubs were required to convert to all-seater configurations by the 1994-95 season. This act pinpointed structural overcrowding and the unrestricted, fluid movement of massive crowds as the true enemies of safety. Enhanced crowd counting via assigned ticketing basically became the new gold standard overnight. Taylor came to this crucial paradigm-shifting realization. The primary cause was a failure in stadium layout and policing, rather than the fan behavior itself. By identifying the fluid, uncompartmentalized nature of the terraces as the core mechanical problem, the government made individual, assigned seating the new non-negotiable baseline for public safety.
Section 4, Science of Stadium Safety.
This shift effectively turned crowd control from a game of guesswork and estimation into a heavily monitored, precise science. It's really fascinating to look at how this was actually codified, specifically through something called the Green Guide.
This became the definitive living manual for stadium operators. It mandated a strict risk-based approach, requiring continuous assessments, safety certification, and annual multi-agency inspections by local authorities, fire, and police departments to ensure ongoing compliance.
I always kind of assumed capacity was just about floor space, but it's actually a really strict mathematical equation. You take your P factors, the hard physical metrics like the width of circulation routes, fire safety mechanisms, and structural integrity, and you multiply them by your S factors, or safety management factors. These assess the active, human elements like the quality of train stewarding, extensive CCTV monitoring, and emergency contingency planning. Both of these factors absolutely must be flawless if a club wants to maximize its capacity.
Section 5. The cost of comfort.
Now, the success of these regulations is pretty much undeniable. There have been 0 fatalities from crowd crushes in UK top division venues since the 90s, but it came with a harsh geometric reality, an immediate 20 to 30% drop in capacity for traditional venues, because individual fixed seats, complete with all the required aisles and safety clearways, inherently just take up significantly more space than a densely packed standing crowd. Yet, paradoxically enough, revenues and attendances absolutely skyrocketed over the following decades. Clubs quickly realized that while they had fewer fans overall, they could build highly lucrative corporate hospitality boxes and attract a much more gentrified demographic. The new, comfortable, family-friendly all-seater stadiums fueled a massive commercial boom. The old era of cheap standing tickets was completely replaced by premium pricing and, let's be honest, vastly overpriced stadium food. But this economic boom left a lot of folks asking a really vital question. Did safety kill the atmosphere? With the traditional working-class terrace core increasingly priced out, and strict seating policies physically enforcing a much more passive, observational viewing style, fans and critics began to argue that this necessary regulation had unintentionally sterilized the intense, raw vocal energy that made the sport so uniquely captivating in the first place.
Section 6. The return of standing.
Recognizing this profound cultural loss, fans spent decades pushing hard for a solution. They wanted a highly engineered compromise to bring back the intimidating, unified energy of the 12th man, but obviously without ever reverting to the fatal hazards of the past. And the demand was totally undeniable. A massive 2018 survey conducted by the Football Supporters Association proved exactly where the culture stood. 69% of fans stated they preferred standing over seating. They desperately wanted to recapture that vibrant, participatory energy that just sitting down simply couldn't replicate. And the breakthrough for this was an elegant engineering solution known as safe standing. It's a brilliant hybrid system. First off, it maintains assigned ticketing, which ensures exactly one person per designated spot. Second, it utilizes robust rail seating. These waist-high, continuous metal barriers compartmentalize the crowd row by row, providing vital vertical support and making those deadly forward crowd surges physically impossible. Finally, the seats themselves flip down and lock right into place, allowing the venue to instantly convert back to standard all-seater compliance for international events that still require it. Now, this wasn't implemented blindly. It was meticulously validated by successful small-scale trials and rigorous empirical data showing absolutely 0 increased risks of injury or crushing. Armed with this hard science, the government finally amended the rules in 2022. The new order allowed up to 10,000 rail-seated positions per ground, officially ending the decades-long blanket ban on standing in the top tiers. Which brings us to the future, and a final thought to leave you with. As stadiums continue to push boundaries, like integrating emerging technologies such as real-time AI density tracking via LiDAR sensors with these new hybrid physical spaces, we have to wonder, how will the delicate balance between authentic tribal fan culture and the strict mathematical regulation of crowd dynamics shape the mega venues of tomorrow? Can the raw passion of the past truly permanently coexist with the precise science of the future? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.